President Buhari gives NDDC Friday deadline to pay stranded Nigerian students on scholarship. Federal government increases hate speech fine to 5 million naira. In international news, Beirut explosion kills nearly 100, injures thousands. And in sport, Nigerian female footballers react to cancellation of AFCON 2020.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Nigeria's total confirmed COVID-19 cases now tally 44,433. New figures released by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control show the country recorded 304 new cases on Tuesday in Lagos, the Federal Capital Territory, and 17 other states. FCT toppled the list with 90 infections, followed by Lagos with 59 cases. The agency also disclosed that so far more than 31,000 infected persons have recovered and have been discharged. President Muhammadu Buhari has given the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) till the end of the week to pay Nigerian students who are beneficiaries of the Commission's scholarship program but who are now stranded abroad. NDDC Director of Corporate Affairs, Charles Odili, mentioned this after delivering the NDDC management's invitation to the President to inaugurate the 29-kilometer Ogyanembe Road in Bayelsa State. Stranded NDDC scholarship students recently protested against the failure of the Commission to pay their tuition and welfare, which they say the Commission has not paid for a year. Odili says the delay in the remittance of the fees was caused by the sudden death of Ibanga Etang, the Commission's former acting executive director in charge of finance and administration. A new directive by the federal government has increased to 5 million naira the fine for anyone found guilty of violating the hate speech law. The government also mandated broadcast stations to devote more airtime to public education on COVID-19 pandemic. Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, revealed these new directives while outlining some reviewed broadcasting code. Mohammed said the amendments were necessitated by a presidential directive in the wake of the 2019 general elections for inquiry into the regulatory role of the National Broadcasting Commission, as well as the conduct of the various broadcast stations before, during and after elections. The minister says these recommendations have been approved by the president with the aim of repositioning the NBC. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Bar Association, senior lawyers and human rights groups seem unhappy with this development. These groups say the hike is an attempt to stifle the media and kill free speech through unconstitutional means. A power play has ensued between the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the Nigeria Postal Service over the collection of stamp duties. On their respective official Twitter pages, NIPOST board chairman Maimuna Abubakar accused the FIRS of stealing the mandate of NIPOST by accepting payment for stamp duties, while FIRS says NIPOST was collecting stamp duties illegally. FIRS claims it is the sole agency charged with that responsibility of assessing, collecting, and accounting for all tax types, including stamp duties. FIRS vows it would bring to book anyone found culpable of misappropriating the funds.
Coming up, African stories. South Africa's auto sector slowly rebounding after easing of lockdown. International news. Beirut explosion kills nearly 100, injures thousands.
You are watching ANN.
Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you'll need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. South Africa has a sunny picture emerging from one of its economic sectors after months of dire economic stories brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. As Sumitra Undu reports, the country's auto sector is slowly rebounding after easing of lockdown.
The automotive industry in South Africa contributes over 7% to GDP. The sector also accounts for almost 500,000 jobs, but the industry has been taking strain due to the poor state of the economy. COVID-19 has added to the industry's woes.
The automotive sector arguably is the only success case of a proactive industrial strategy in South Africa in the last generation. The sector undoubtedly is our single most value-added export. So it's an industry with high IP, significant levels of FDI that is attractive to the country.
Car dealerships reopened in May, but people were either too scared to go out or had no money to look at a new purchase. Vehicle sales in May fell 68%.
In March, for an example, we've seen a 98% drop of vehicle sales, particularly the domestic vehicle sales in the country compared to the previous corresponding period. And that number is beginning to pick up again because obviously the economy is back online and we are able now to trade as much as possible.
While the domestic market is expected to recover this year, the export market, which fell 64% in May, could take longer.
Car sales fell by almost 31% in June. It's a massive decline. However, finance institutions say that this decline is unlikely to continue as they're seeing more applications for finance this year than they did last year.
People are buying used cars because you can get a better deal for the money and potentially pay less for a used car. What the dealerships are doing, and those that are succeeding during the lockdown and during this time, is employing strategies that are referred to as automotive digital retailers. They're upgrading their websites, putting in place technology so that consumers that are buying cars can not only apply for finance, but actually go through the journey of getting finance for the car.
The demand for new vehicles is improving. Vehicle prices rose above inflation for the first time since 2017. June consumer inflation rose 2.2%, while vehicle inflation rose 6.5%.
In a move to kickstart Egypt's economy that has been adversely affected by measures to control the spread of the coronavirus, operating hours of cafes and restaurants have been extended until midnight. As correspondent Adil El Maruki reports, operating hours for malls, stores and shops have also been extended to 10 p.m.
The Sou'i and Soda has been one of the fastest growing restaurants in Egypt. In 2019 alone, the 3-year-old domestic brand jumped from 5 to 12 branches. This year should have witnessed a spike in revenues. Instead, it has been curtailed by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The
full lockdown took place on March 25th. On March 26th, our sales were zero. We then saw a gradual increase. By April, we averaged 6% of our usual sales. In May, we reached 18%, and by June, it became 28%. If the core of our business was fast food, home delivery would represent 40 to 60% of the core sales. But the normal delivery percentage in the Saswa dining sales is 14%.
Officially, 700,000 Egyptians work in cafes and restaurants. Experts estimate that figure to reach 2 million when informal labor is included. To ease the economic impact on this sector, the government increased their working hours from 10 in the evening to midnight, while maintaining a 50% restriction for occupancies.
I don't think these 2 extra hours will make a big difference in sales because the consumer behavior has changed. The lifestyle has changed. We used to start seeing flow of customers at 6 p.m. Now it's from 2. To bring the economy back to normal, life must go back to normal. Having regular working hours will reflect on when people will need a break or come to restaurants.
Going back to near normal operation hours will benefit employees whose salaries have been cut during the past months. Their income won't be the same though, as tips and bonuses are far lower than their norm. And while the impact of COVID-19 lasts, business owners have been trying to look for creative ways to keep their restaurants afloat.
We opened seasonal branches. We went to the North Coast to open a branch for a few months to generate revenues and make use of our staff's workforce. The secret to success this year is to cut costs and to survive with our brand names. If this year ends rationally, I think in best cases, restaurants might lose 10 to 20% of their market value.
Investments in Egyptian cafes and restaurants were worth $13.5 billion in 2017.
The government restrictions are gradually getting lifted, but restaurants know it's going to be a long process for a full recovery. And the concern now is not about making profit, it's about surviving that period.
The Chinese embassy in Burkina Faso has donated 46 artificial respirators to the country. The respirators and a batch of medical equipment were handed over to the Burkinabe health authorities. The medical supplies are expected to help in better treatment of COVID-19 patients. Burkina Faso currently has more than 1,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus and 53 deaths. Chinese ambassador to Burkina Faso, Li Yuan, said his country made the donations because of the health emergency caused by the pandemic. He said the respirators will increase the country's capacity for treatment of respiratory diseases. Burkina Faso Health Minister Wilfred Ouedraogo thanked China for the respirators. He said cooperation between the two countries in the field of health is increasing and intensifying.
When we return, international news. Beirut explosion kills nearly 100, injures thousands. And later, sports. Nigerian female footballers react to cancellation of AFCON 2020.
You are watching ANN.
Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you'll need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab is demanding accountability for a massive explosion that tore through port warehouses near central Beirut, killing nearly 100 persons and injuring nearly 4,000. The shockwaves shattered windows, smashed masonry, and shook the ground across the Lebanese capital.
An earth-shaking blast tore through Beirut on Tuesday, killing dozens and injuring thousands, officials said. The blast, caught on video by those nearby, occurred at the site of a burning fire near the port in the Lebanese capital, throwing people miles away onto their backs, ripping balconies off buildings and sending glass flying, witnesses said.
We heard the first explosion and went to see what happened. I didn't have time. I didn't realize there would be a second explosion. The glass exploded in front of me.
We were at home. We heard what sounded like fireworks. We thought it was a container in the port that was on fire and they weren't able to put it out. A few seconds later, we were flying through the air.
The explosion, described by many as intense as an earthquake, could even be heard and felt as far away as Cyprus. While no group has claimed responsibility for the blast and Israel has denied involvement, Lebanese Prime Minister Hassan Diab swiftly demanded accountability for what he called a catastrophe.
Those responsible will pay the price for what happened. This is a promise to the martyrs and to the wounded. This is a national commitment. The facts will be revealed about this dangerous warehouse that has been there since 2014.
Lebanon's interior minister said initial information indicated highly explosive material seized years ago that had been stored at the port had blown up. The minister told an Arabic TV station ammonium nitrate had been in storage there since 2014. Reuters video journalists captured scenes from the aftermath, residents scrambling to drive the injured to nearby hospitals, already overwhelmed with victims. It was not immediately clear what caused the initial blaze on Tuesday that set off the blast. The site of the explosion could be seen burning and smoldering as night fell, with the death toll expected to rise.
Our arts go out to the people of Lebanon. The UK government has decided to extend the COVID-19 lockdown to prevent a second wave of the coronavirus. The changes mean more indoor businesses will stay shut for a few more weeks. And correspondent Nawid Jabakil reports.
Here on this London high street, things are getting back to normal. But the government has decided to put the brakes on the easing of lockdown measures in England, a sign of growing concern about a rise in COVID-19 cases. The changes mean businesses like casinos, bowling alleys and indoor theatres, along with music venues, will have to stay shut for a few more weeks. The government says it wants to avoid a second wave of the virus, and out on the streets, people seem to support the move.
I think it's the right decision given what the medical professionals have been saying, but I think it's very difficult for the whole of the entertainment industry at the moment to be able to go and make a living and make plans when they're changed at the last minute.
As you can hear from the news, the second wave of this pandemic is coming up again, so it's better we don't just relax everything.
We've got to restrict and keep the public safe. So obviously I believe in the government and what they're doing. I know they've made some silly decisions at the start, but then again with hindsight we didn't really understand how big this epidemic is.
Should be locking down harder.
Locking down harder?
Yeah.
Why is that?
So we can release, so we can get over it, get it right down, and then we can have these things open.
If it's based on science, then it's a good decision. People criticise them for not locking down early enough, and then when we start doing things now that stop people going on holiday, they complain. You can't have it both ways.
There will be many businesses and individuals disappointed with the latest lockdown extension. But one major change moving ahead will be the end to shielding. 2.2 million of the highest risk people in England, Scotland and Northern Ireland are now allowed to leave their homes and go to work. The so-called vulnerable parts of society were told to isolate back in late March to protect themselves from COVID.
The early signs for retailers are positive. Consumer spending did bounce back in June, but with more jobs being axed weekly, many here in the UK are bracing themselves for tougher times ahead.
Up next, sports. Nigerian female footballers react to cancellation of AFCON 2020. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit. We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, just recently, the Confederation of African Football cancelled the 2020 African Women Cup of Nations tournament as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and this has generated mixed reactions from sports women and enthusiasts. Respondent Kelechi Mekalam has the details.
Preparations were ongoing long before the decision to cancel the 2020 African Women's Cup of Nations finals was made. An inevitable decision for the Confederation of African Football following the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. The event was scheduled to kick off on the 23rd of November. In Nigeria, the land of reigning champions and record AFCON winners, some see the cancellation as a major setback to women's football.
It happens to the guys. The guys are whatever competition has been postponed, but same thing happened to female. They cancelled ours. So I think the best thing to do is to do what they did for the guys, to postpone ours and give us the day to play.
Since the cancellation, we are just not happy. We can't really express our dissatisfaction about it.
Around the world, post-COVID-19 football had resumed amid strict health guidelines and no fans, despite the rising global cases. Many had expected CAF to follow a similar path. However, some support the move to cancel the 2020 AFCON finals.
Football is a contact sport. It's like combat sports, you understand? There must be, more body contact, even talking about the players. When we talk about the fans also, cancellation is better than to play the tournament without fans, without spectators. No. Let there be no football until everything is clear. When the pandemic is a bit relaxed, then they can stage it. Like I say, life is better than anything. Let's secure our lives first before we think about any tournament or competition.
Nigeria's Super Falcons are the most successful team in the tournament's history with a record 11 titles. But despite this outstanding record, female footballers in the country lament of being relegated to the background. But there is hope. CAF has recently launched the African Women's Champions League for the first time in history. The African football governing body hopes that this will go some way in stemming the frustrations female players feel after the AFCON cancellation.
And that is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.